word I come up with is indefatigable. You know, just always moving forward and trying to bring people along with him, his audience, his friends, his family, whoever it was.
A lot of things in my life, I've been good, I've been bad. Made a lot of promises that I never should have.
I think probably Billy was the most talented guy who never had critical acclaim of anybody that I've ever worked with in my life.
Lock me up, bail me out, I'm back on your doorstep again.
He had a focus, a drive, you know, just a personal and creative drive that was uncanny. And people wanted to be with him, and they wanted to do that so that they could go on tour. I mean, Bill was, you know, going outside the state of New Jersey and into New York and playing gigs. That nobody was doing that down the shore at this time.
I went and auditioned for the Storytellers, which was forming. And I went, Buzzy lent me his drums, I set the drums up at this guy Chippy Gallagher's house, who later became the drummer. And I played a song with them, and then Bill says, play Wipeout at the audition. And I said, no, I don't do Wipeout, I'm not a lead drummer, I just play drum beats. He goes, no, that's okay, thank you. And I didn't get the job, I was fired immediately. Okay, but Chippy Gallagher got the job, and that's basically how I met Bill, but just through being a kid growing up, wanting to play.
The Storytellers was a North Jersey band that that Bill had put together and played North Jersey, but more importantly, played in the city as well.
I saw the Storytellers back at the Hullabaloo scene in Asbury Park, and I guess it must have been about '66. And by then, I didn't know any of those guys. I remember Billy. He had the coolest stance. He had these long legs and hair. And so I remember Billy really well. And I remember Danny being in the band. I remember them very well. It was a good band. I mean, we were, you know, all us kids in Asbury Park were impressed. They had a record deal. I mean, they had a record out and all that.
What Bill brought to the area was a sense of experience and professionalism, both he and Danny Federici, because both Danny and Bill were from up North Jersey and had good relationships with things going on in New York City.
When I saw him with the Storytellers, he had a giant stage presence. I mean, he's a big guy, first of all, and you know, he just had this stance, and you remember it.
There was a place called the Upstage that happened in Asbury Park, and it was all about jamming. And that's where all of the camaraderie came in, because I would go there, I was a drummer, but I'd get to play with all these different guys, not my band, all these different guys, Chinnock, Garry Tallent, Sonny Kent, Ricky DeSarno, you know, the list can go on, Davey Sanchez, the list can go on and on and on. And that's where everybody met everyone and played. That's where I met, you know, Bruce, Danny Federici, and all them guys. That's how we got together, from the Upstage. And basically, that's how I played with Bill before I played with Bruce.
Got to know Danny first. I went to high school with Vini. So I don't know where to begin with all this, but with Billy, I guess it was through Vini that I met Billy.
History gets murky there because who's exactly an official member and who is not, and the history depending on who you talk to, because when you're young, you know, bands form and break up like you change socks, especially back in that period.
We had Wendell, who was black bass player, who wore a priest collar and white gloves, and we got on the Electric Circus tour, and we played a Steve Paul scene here in New York City, and had a great time, you know, and that's what it was all about, having a great time. We were kids, and we wanted, and the music was important, you know. We didn't necessarily know how to do it, but we certainly learned how to do it real quick by playing all the shows that we did.
He decided at some point that that Wendell John was going to be the lead singer of the band, and he wanted me to play bass, which was cool. I loved the band. That's terrific. So we rehearsed, and I learned the songs, and there was a show to do up in New York, and we rehearsed, of course, the songs without Wendell. And we got to the gig, and Wendell shows up with his bass, and nobody told Wendell that he wasn't playing bass anymore. He was just going to be the lead singer. Well, that was typical Billy. I mean, Wendell was gracious enough to actually do the gig, and he sang, and I played bass, and I think that was the last gig the Downtown Tangiers band ever did.
After that band broke up, Danny Federici and I went and hooked up with Bruce and played our stint with Bruce.
Danny Federici was someone who was palling with him as well. And it's safe to say that nucleus of Bill Chinnock, Danny Federici, Vini Lopez, and to a certain degree Garry Tallent, if one were to do a family tree of the Jersey Shore music scene, that would be one very, very big root, if not one of the trunks. And Bruce, of course, being the other one. But that from that Garry Tallent, Bill Chinnock, Danny Federici, Vini Lopez trunk comes, well, the E Street Band and everything else. I mean, they don't get the credit that they really should.
The very first song the Steel Mill did, when I first met Bruce, was a Bill Chinnock song called Crown Liquor.
Traffic's always heavy on a Saturday night. The Crown Liquor. Everybody says make you feel alright. Crown Liquor. You know that bottle's not your friend.
Bill was, again, saw Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, and then all of a sudden says, this is what I want to do, and gets this complete clarity of vision about how he needs to become a authentic bluesman.
I woke late this morning, feeling like my soul been wanting. Lord, I surely went and paid my dues.
One of the things that Bill did before he came to Maine was he went on the Chitlin circuit. And he played with Little Walter and Big Walter and all them guys, all the famous blues players. And matter of fact, Big Walter taught him how to do the belly thing with the harmonica. So he was right into the blues when he came up to Maine. Blues was like, that was going to be his future. And he was going to be the greatest white blues artist in history.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
He was doing an album for Paramount, and he had used Jim McKinney's band, Colored Rain, the players in that band, and he had rehearsed them. They went down to Eddie's, where we are right now, in Lewiston, and recorded an album called Bill Chinnock Blues. He figured out after a while that in order to be a great blues artist, you had to live the lifestyle, which meant being poor. There's not a lot of rich blues artists, and I think he wanted more, so he made the transition to rock and roll quite early on.
After he fully explores the whole thing of the authenticity of the blues and his bluesman, he goes back to what I've always thought he would do best, and that's rhythm and blues based, horn-driven, just full-on kick-ass R&B based rock and roll.
He wore this little cabbie hat, and he was real Jersey. It was well built, and the girls all went bananas over him, So, but it was his voice and his talent and ambition and drive. That was what I was attracted to.
He created North Country Records, NCR 001, Alive at the Loft. We saved our lunch money. Bill bought a recording machine. We went and just what you call woodshedding. We stayed in there. We recorded the album on a shoestring budget with our lunch money, Band-Aids and bubble gums. We pressed it, we packaged it, and it went out. And it sold. It sold.
We did the NECCAA audition, which was the New England small colleges. Everybody who was anybody had done this. Springsteen, Dylan. They'd all gone to this audition. You go and you play for 20 minutes. And all the colleges from all over the East Coast, they have a pin board. And they go see your audition, and there's a different colored pin for each college, whether it's Holy Cross or Notre Dame or wherever you are. And they go watch the band, and they go out and they put these pins on this board, and you get booked. And they try to hit the board for each artist on a date that's available. Well, he had the biggest amount of bookings of anybody in the history of that tour. More than Springsteen, more than Dylan, more than Joan Baez, more than any of them. When people saw that band, that's all they wanted. They wanted Bill Chinnock.
Bill called me up. He says, I need looking for a drummer, he's done it to Vladimir before, hey, I need somebody to get to Maine now, So I dropped everything and put my drums in cases and got on a plane and went to Maine and, worked on the Badlands album.
At the time, we were doing all this touring and stuff with the bus. We had the bus, we had our act together, we were killing audiences everywhere. And we'd done a show in New Haven where Motown came. They brought their bus, looked like a rolling French whorehouse, this beautiful, great big bus. All the executives were on it, and they wanted to sign him. And they offered him $100,000 for the first album. And he actually considered it, he thought about it, but his big dream was Atlantic.
When you listen to Badlands, in particular, and Dime Store Heroes and these kind of things, and songs like Ironbound. These are classics in my view. I think they're brilliant.
And what he'd done was he had presented Badlands to Atlantic the year before, about a year before this thing with Motown. And it took a year for that album to go from the bottom of A&R, one person at a time, I like it, it passed, I like it passed, up through the executives, all the way to Jerry Greenberg. And they called him up one day and said, we're going to sign you. And because he just threw all the other label offers right out of the table. This was it. He had the biggest new single artist contract in the history of Atlanta.
Sailing in the concrete, ride with me, ride with me. I'll make my stand and die like a man in the Badlands.
I got a call from Bruce, very, very upset that somebody that Billy had stolen Badlands. Bruce had written a song called Badlands, and he was going to name the album, The Darkness on the Edge of Town album, was going to be Badlands. And then before he could do it, he got word that Billy had an album out called Badlands. And he was just sure that I had gotten together with Billy and given him the song or something. But of course it wasn't. But yeah, that's not true.
I would put Badlands and Dime Store Heroes up and anything from that period and say this is a great representation, not just of the Jersey Shore sound, but of music in general back then.
We got maybe 3/4 of the way done into the album, and I was pretty much done with the stuff I had to do. So I left, and Bill started getting into some arguments with Genghis, and he ended up going down and getting he got a meeting with Jerry Greenberg, and he went into Jerry's office, and he said, you know, you got some dinosaurs down in that studio that are taking me where I don't want to go. And he said, but if you'll build me a studio up in Hollis, Maine, give me the money, I'll go up there and I'll make you the greatest rock and roll album in the history of Atlanta. Jerry Greenberg says, okay, kid. Sent him out of the office, gave him all the tapes with all those great players on it, gave him the money to put the studio together up in Hollis, and Bill went up there and just loaded it up with his guitar tracks. And he wrote Dime Store Heroes. Dime Store Heroes hadn't been written at the time.
I owned a little house up in Hollis, Maine in the 80s. Recorded an album for Atlantic, and it was in the disco era. I just don't dance. So I came home and recorded the album all over again in our studio up in Hollis. So for all the Dime Store heroes that are here tonight.
He took finished the album, and he took it down to Jerry Greenberg and put it on his desk, the master tape, and Jerry played it, and he said, I'll tell you what, he says, we'll distribute the album for you, but with your name on it and no label. We're not interested in it.
Been a lot of things in my life, I was good, I was bad.
I worked with Dick Curlis, wonderful, wonderful country music singer, and we did quite a few albums together. And he told me of his son-in-law that was very talented. And of course, you hear that all the time, so I really didn't pay much attention to that until I got a call from Billy, and he was talking about coming to Nashville, and wanted to cut some stuff and wanted to work with me, and I discouraged him from coming, because we were doing all country at that time, and from what I understood and from the stuff that he'd sent me, he was strictly rock and roll. And despite my trying to discourage him, well, he and Terry did arrive in Nashville.
He visited me in New York. I was living in New York, and we hung out for a couple of days. And we were talking, I mean, basically where rock and roll was heading. And we both kind of had the same vision of what country music could be, we were both big fans of country music, and the melding of rock and roll was kind of going off and not being rock and roll anymore, and we thought, you know, that the future of rock and roll was in country.
The music that we made, I thought was really good and honest and true to Billy, and the crazy thing about it is that if he were here now, he'd be right perfect in the midstream of what's happening. He was just like 20 years ahead of his time or so.
Up with a white Lincoln convertible, parked underneath the lights. Driving was this pony.
Bill understood it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He had that vision. He knew where the music was going. If half of that stuff was released now and he was, you know, if he was 30 years old or 28 years old, it'd be a completely different story. He'd be right on it. You listen to some of those records, and they fit beautifully today.
Rock and Roll Cowboy, you know, would be just perfect for now.
I got a call from him one day. This was probably 1981 or 82, something like that. And he was looking for a bass player. And somebody had recommended me. I was living in New York at the time. And he had a band it was all New York guys. And so, I just went down and did an audition. I don't know if it was because I was the last guy that they were auditioning and or whatever, but they said, okay, great, and Bill called me and said, wow, we'd love to have you play. And, it's a great band. Tony Smith is in the band, and Peter Valentine, and Bobby Malik was playing sax, and Nelson Bogart was on guitar and stuff like that. So I said to Bill, okay, well, when are we going to rehearse? He said, well, maybe you can go pick up a tape from Bobby Malik, and because we have a gig on Friday, and I think this was like Thursday morning. So really, we're not going to rehearse.
We make arrangements to do this gig at the Bottom Line with Bill. It's classic Bill Chinnock. We do the rehearsals, we go do the sound check, and sometime between the sound check and the gig, Bill I don't know what exactly it was that happened, but I gather whatever it was, he was doing something. And you know how you bend down, and then as you stand up, you hit your head on something. He hit his head so badly that he had to get stitches. So when we come back after the sound check and we're there getting ready to do the gig, here comes Bill with these stitches, and I'm like, oh my God, what happened to you? He's like, don't worry about it. I had to get some stitches, but we're like, how's he gonna do the gig with his head stitched up? He didn't miss a beat. Bill is like the ultimate, the show must go on guy.
We did a show with the Outlaws at Lennox on the Lawn. It was one of the shows where the booking agent had booked Bill because he was mad at somebody in the band or the manager. So he says, okay, I'll put Bill Chinnock on the show. They were laughing. Well, they found out who he was. We got out on that stage, and we did about 5 or 6 songs. He had him in the palm of his hand. They were killing the audience. There was 10,000 people up there. And they were throwing bottle caps on the stage and money when we first came on, saying, we want the Outlaws. Well, that stopped. That stopped after about halfway through the second song. And by the 5th song, all of a sudden, the bottoms went out on the PA. An old track, they all do it. The sound man and just before the Outlaws came on, some guy went, oh, there it is. So we had no bottoms on the PA. All he had was this horn. And he walks up to the mic to this 10,000 hippies out in the crowd, screaming Outlaw fan. And he says, the PA's gone, but I don't give a shit. I'm going to rock you right through those bushes over there. And he went back and started, and the place went bananas. Screaming 10,000 people. It was the biggest crowd I think I'd ever played with him. And encore after encore after encore. And the Outlaws were they were getting really pissed, and finally they got him off the stage. He wouldn't leave,
I remember seeing him once. I believe it was at, I want to say it was at the Fast Lane, which was a club that opened in the mid-'80s or so on the Jersey Shore, just a few blocks from the Pony. I walked in there. I remember I couldn't go to sleep that night. He had me so wired. I had such musical adrenaline going through me. I couldn't even write the review. I mean, it was like, wow.
He was the best. One of the things about Bill Chinnock that I always admired about him is that he would not let the audience off the hook.
Look at all you out there, and
He would not let them off the hook. If they weren't paying attention, if they weren't going crazy over it, he'd make them. And he'd always get away with it.
He was incredible. I went to New York and watched him perform up there, and he was incredible. He just was a great entertainer, a great singer, and he had it all. He really had it all.
When he was on stage, there was nobody better, ever. Not Springsteen, not anybody. Nobody could touch him.
need me, reach for me. I'm the voice in the wind, only you can hear.
I was at my house, and my wife had passed. And then after that, a few of my friends passed, but then when I heard that Bill passed, I lost something right there.
I get, sometimes when somebody calls you and just by the tone of their voice, you know that, like, okay, what can this be? Oh God, there's only a couple of possibilities of what this is, so it was pretty shocking.
When I got the call that he wasn't here anymore, I was devastated because there just isn't anything else. There isn't any other experience musically that's like the experience that you have when you work with Bill. He's one of a kind. One of a kind.
I was on the way to work, and I had a voicemail, and it was from Billy's attorney here locally, and he told me that he had passed, and it was really upsetting. Really upsetting.
He's a phenomenal songwriter, phenomenal guitarist and singer, great in the studio, great live, but he had that great big old heart in all of what it is that he did.
He was a good friend and warm-hearted person and really smart and and as a musician, I think that his musical gifts were really deep as a singer especially, but also as a guitar player and as a songwriter.
I started working on him in '69. I worked with him until 2004, so 35 years I was with him, longer than anybody.
The most important thing was, and as Vinny had said, Bill wore many hats. He was everything. He was also your friend. This is a guy who was extremely busy, very prolific, but if something was happening in your life, personally, nothing to do with music, he'd be there. He'd be there. He'd go with you to whatever the event was and be there for you. And I tell you, it was one very rare and special human being.
Bill was a real friend. Once he was your friend, he was always your friend and always really your friend. At one point I was having like a really horrible time. I was dealing with a really abusive situation in a relationship, and Bill was like, look, you come up here, just pack up, pack your stuff, you and Devin, come here. So packed our stuff, went to Maine and stayed with, Bill was there, man. He was 120,000% there for you, no matter what.
He loved the music, loved to perform, be in front of people. Even when the last time I performed with him, he put on a tremendous show, and he had this box on his belt with a needle in it, sticking in his stomach, feeding him antibiotics because of that rotten disease he had. And he's still up there with that needle stuck in his stomach, playing away and loving it.
He was a sweet guy, and just always, always going for the prize. And I miss him.
Well, I have a different way of judging people because I judge them on their talent but then I judge them on what kind of human beings they are. So my judgment is that he was a heck of a fine human being, and the talent, was wonderful. But at the end of the day, my judgment is whether they were good people or not, and he and Terry were the best.
He's your mother, he's your father, he's your brother, he's your sister. Your aunt, your uncle, he's your doctor. He was everything. When you were in the band and you were on the road, he took care of you. Always. That was Bill.
Just a dime star hero falling in a tailspin. Just a dime